Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zach, and here we talk about overlanding, gear builds, DIY, all sorts of stuff related to modifying your vehicle. Today we are going to be talking about a rooftop tent that is really on the budget side, and with a lot of the lightweight tents out there, those tend to kind of be the ones that are on the budget side. So if you're trying to save weight and you're trying to save money, you can kind of do both at the same time by getting some of these lighter weight tents on the market. However, sometimes these lighter weight tents are just not as feature packed as some of the hard shell tents. And so that's what I thought was really kind of cool about this top oak tent. Not to mention it's sold on Amazon, which typically means it's more available to more people. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts on this product. So Top Oak actually reached out to me. They wanted to work together on this video, so I will say that there's kind of that sponsorship bias already. But at a price point of $1,300 for this tent and then $300 for shipping because it's coming from overseas, it seemed like a really competitive product, and I wanted to kind of get my hands on it and see what I thought and kind of test it out. So what we'll first do is we'll kind of do a bit of an unboxing here in my garage, and then we'll go out and I'll kind of talk to you about some of the features and some of my initial thoughts. So I'm trying to think of the total numbers I've spent in the tent at this point. It's probably like 4 or 5, but I wanted to just test it out a few times first before making this video, rather than just like, you know, putting it in my garage and kind of talking about the features. So yeah, like I said, first we'll do that unboxing, then we'll talk about my thoughts. But first I want to just mention, for some of you out there that maybe are a little worried about rooftop tents in general, something really interesting that I kind of stumbled upon is similar to how I've talked about in my full skids video, where my gas mileage went up due to aerodynamics. When I added my full skids package from C4, I added quite a bit of weight. I think it's a couple 100 pounds in steel. And my gas mileage has gone up since doing that, because now I have a smooth, flat surface on the whole belly of my vehicle, and that seems to help with, I don't know if it's wind drag or if it's just, you know, some sort of aerodynamics. And so I'm thinking I kind of stumbled upon something similar with rooftop tents. So when I was using this rooftop tent, I never mounted anything on the sides or the top of it. And I was going like over 70 miles an hour. I'll throw a couple scan gauge, you know, photos / screenshots in, and what these are showing is I was probably an hour and a half or so into my drive, and this was the average. So I was going typically on the highways anywhere between like 65 and 80 miles per hour, kind of around that region. And if you've ever talked to me on Instagram or seen some of my past videos, I talk about how my car gets decent gas mileage going to and from work, typically around like 14 and a half to 16 miles per gallon. And essentially here, I was going above that sort of speed threshold, which is really probably more an RPM threshold. But my car was doing great, and there was really no winds, so it's not like I had a tailwind, but there also, yeah, it's just, I can't really explain it other than maybe what it was doing is smoothing out all of the crossbars on the top of my rack and kind of preventing that wind drag there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I want to share it because, yeah, I was going over 70 miles an hour, averaging 17 miles per gallon on 35s. I've switched back to my beadlock wheels, so they're not even the lighter 35s that I was running for a little while to do a test, which I got a video coming on that. So yeah, it's just really interesting because my vehicle, by all standards, typically should be a pretty horribly inefficient vehicle. I've got heavy 35s, over 100 pounds per tire. I am re-geared to 488s. I'm running a 3.5-inch lift, and I've got all this stuff mounted on the vehicle that probably creates some sort of wind drag. So my takeaway from this is I might actually try and build some sort of smooth platform to put on my rack in the winter, because I think it might help with gas mileage. Some sort of plate or something that I can put on those crossbars. All right, well, enough of that. Let's jump over to the garage. I'm going to talk about some of these features, kind of give you a first look at this tent, and then I will talk about it on the 4Runner and give you kind of a sneak peek. So, all right, let's jump right into it. All right, well, here is the tent, and basically the tent comes in a massive cardboard box. There's plywood on top and bottom to help set up the tent nicely. So this tent has already gone through a couple iterations. They sent me a tent that was a previous version that was used in part of the video, and then I used this tent to kind of show just some of the updated features that are coming. But what I'm going to do is kind of show you some of the different things that are included in the packaging. And one thing to note is before you ever open any of this stuff to like actually use, just thoroughly inspect things. So all of these components are shipped inside of the tent, so hopefully none of them are damaged, but inspect the entire exterior of the tent and make sure that everything looks good, because one of the really big benefits of this company is they pay for insurance for the entire tent. So no matter what happens to your tent, if you have problems during shipping, they're going to be on your side and help take care of you. And I think that's a really nice feature of this tent, because you would hate to order some sort of product on Amazon that seems to be a good deal, but then customer service ghosts you. But this customer service doesn't really have any reason to ghost you, because everything's insured and they should be able to take care of it without it being on their dime, because it's really not their fault. It's a shipping company fault. So just talking a little bit about what's included on the exterior of this tent, we've got some hooks on the side here. We've got a few hooks on the back. We've got two massive latches, which are kind of like a custom latch. They're not like the most, I mean, maybe they're kind of standard for these rooftop tents, but they basically just have like a hinging piece of metal that you turn to lock and unlock. A nice handle there. Another set of hooks on this side, and basically those hooks are for hooking the ladder onto the tent. And then we've got 4 hinges on the front here. Then we have 2 crossbars that are included, which is kind of nice. So if you want to mount storage cases or, traction boards or something on top of the tent, you definitely could do so. The top of the tent is also like one massive panel, which is pretty nice as well. So if you wanted to mount some sort of stick-on solar panel or something, it's not like a funky shape, so things are going to mount nicely to it. If we come over here, these are 2 boxes of hardware. So one of them is these black painted brackets for the crossbars, so I really like that. And we've got a bunch of hardware included here for that. And then this is the mounting hardware for on top of the tent. So we've got 2 brackets per side, and then they include this massive piece of heat shrink on it, so hopefully it doesn't scuff up things too bad and shouldn't rattle too bad. What I would recommend is make sure to mount these nicely spaced, because if you put them way towards the back and the front, then the middle will kind of bounce a bit due to all the crossbars on like Prinsu and Sherpa racks. So try and put those towards the middle. I may even suggest to them that they include 2 more of them. But what I did is I put a couple pieces of paper towel on the crossbars in the middle, and it didn't make any noises for me. That was able to take that out. So something to think about, or maybe those crossbars could be moved a bit. I'm not sure, but let's just kind of unpackage this hardware, and I'll show you what's actually in these bags. So if we're looking at the hardware here, it appears that we would use one of these bolts with a lock nut on the side here, and then we'd use 2 of these button heads with these for this side. And given that a bunch of things are connected to the tent already with these button heads, I presume this side would mount to the tent, and then this would be connected to the crossbar. So it looks like this essentially would mount inside of the channel on the crossbar, and then this would go in the channel on the tent. And then once you get everything mounted up, these are little plugs you can put on the end of the crossbar. Like I said earlier, we've got 4 brackets, 2 for the 2 crossbars. And then if we come over here, this is the mounting hardware for the tent to go actually on your roof. So we've got these long bolts. What they basically do is they feed through this hole, and they will pinch inside of this channel for mounting on the vehicle. So I'll throw a picture up of the old mounting hardware before this was improved. but it seats in there like this. That sticks down. That will go through the bracket just like so, and then you put this on. One thing you may run into is if your roof is really low profile, you may need to cut these bolts off a bit. It may be advantageous even to just use a lock washer or lock nut or nylon nut or something, so that you don't need to have all of this taking up space, depending upon kind of the profile of your roof. But what I found was, essentially, when I mounted these up, it was just easy to put the crossbars on, figure out where they needed to go, and then tighten everything down. And then when I would go and mount this on my car, the crossbars were already mounted up, so I wasn't reaching under the tent. And then you just put in the Allen button heads on the ends for the two crossbars. Because what basically happens is on the Prinsu or Sherpa racks, like there's 8 or so crossbars in total. So all you got to do is set the tent on the pre-existing like 5 or 6 crossbars, and then you've got 2 floating there that are connected to the tent, and you just have to bolt those into the rack. So your other crossbars kind of hold the tent in the right height, and then you just got to barely nudge it and put the bolts in. So it works out pretty nice. All right, well, that's everything that's included. Let's open up the tent, and I'll just quick talk about a couple of the features here, and then I'll kind of give you my thoughts actually using the tent. So I'll just give you a little bit of a closer look at this lock. So you can see it here. That's how the lock works. So you just twist it. There's unlock. Grab the handle, hinge it open, pops off. Come over here, do the same thing. Hinge it, pops off. Grab the handle, open up the tent. There's always kind of an air suction on these tents. Once you open it, you've got this big handle here. This allows you to pull the tent down when it's up on your roof, since it's pretty tall. This right here is a cord that you can basically pull up and out of the way. This helps to pull everything tight when you're closing the tent. A lot of people recommend you leave the doors open or just the screens so that you can actually get the tent to close and not get air sealed in there too bad. So there's this massive rubber gasket along the whole border, so that keeps out water, but there's also a little ledge on the bottom that helps to keep out water as well. So that's kind of everything exterior that I can think to note. I'm going to crawl inside the tent and basically push out the portion that I was talking about earlier, and you can kind of see a little more about that. So coming inside of the tent here, I'll try and show you some of these features. But one thing I wanted to note was this rain fly up top. So you can loosen or completely disconnect the rain fly if you want. There's this clear window, but under the clear window is a fabric and a screen flap. So that's pretty nice, but it'll overhang on the sides here. So it's a nice roof flap for keeping the rain out. All right, so now if we go on both sides here, here's our 2-inch memory foam mattress. Underneath we've got our condensation mat, and then there's 2 pockets there, 2 pockets over there. Those are kind of nice little cell phone pockets actually if you're putting your head on this side. And then if we kind of look up at the roof here, here's the big fabric flap I was talking about for the sun roof or moon roof or whatever you want to call it. This is a big U-shaped pipe that folds back to hold everything up. And then we've got this supporting bar up top that folds over and extends right here using this clip to hold it into place. So there's one on this side, and then there's another on this side that I left where it goes, just to kind of give you a demonstration. This cable is dangling from a little LED light up here that you can hook into like a wireless power supply. Uses a USB cable. Then if we spin around to this side here, grab our light, we've got another pouch on each side, maybe for shoes or something, hard to say, but there's one on each side. And then we've got this big organizer here, so it looks like you could put some smaller items in the smaller pockets, and then it's almost like a net, so you might be able to shove like a blanket up on top of it. So then if you kind of see that zipper there, I'm kind of looking at it, I don't see a lower zipper for the bottom portion. It seems to all be waterproofed, but the top zips off, so it's like maybe in some world you could just completely take the fabric off entirely and be open to the elements. Or is that so that you can like clean it or something, or maybe replace one or two of the panels? I'm not exactly sure, but the tent comes with a 2-year warranty, so maybe that's like a serviceability thing. But yeah, this is essentially the interior, and I don't know if there's too much else to show you, but I think that there's a lot of really cool features that are packed in here. Some of them are pretty standard like you'd see them on most rooftop tents, but for this price point, a lot of times it seems like companies will cut out features to save money, and it seems like they haven't done that. All right, well, that's kind of the features of the tent. I don't have too much else to talk about here regarding the tent, but if you've got any questions on features, feel free to drop them down below. Yeah, I don't know if I really have any complaints at this point about build quality. Everything seems to be pretty decent or serviceable, and like I said, they come with a 2-year manufacturer defect warranty, so that's pretty nice as well. All right, well, this is probably kind of obvious, but I guess I'll walk through it. So to disassemble or close the tent up, first you're going to disconnect those 2 bars that are supported up top here. Then these windows you want to unzip and put them over the top of this U. We got to do that on both sides. This U is hinging at the back, and it looks like it's actually fixed, so you can't move it. So this will fold down, and it's kind of interesting. I think we might even have to like lift the tent mattress to move it around it. We'll go like that right here, make sure this is out of the way. There we go. Okay, so I kind of move the mattress around that U like that, and then just double check, make sure it's kind of the same over here. Allow it some space to lay next to that mattress there, and then this we're gonna kind of tuck in best we can, and then we'll pull this cord down to pull everything as tight as we can, just like so. Then you'd probably be on the back of your vehicle, you'd grab this and pull down. And as you close it, you're going to have to do a couple tucks a couple times. So kind of reach in here, let some of the air push out, and then crawl up here, tuck this in a couple times, just like so. There. You'll do one side and it'll be perfect, and then the other side will be completely sticking out. So you have to come over here, do that on this side as well. Kind of get it in a decent spot like that. Then we'll grab our handle here, just kind of wad it up and tuck it in. Try to not open up your tent too much because you want to keep that air out. It creates a bit of a vacuum, so when you open it, sucks in air. When you close it, it pushes out air. That looks pretty good to me. If you packed it correctly, these latches should hook in very gently. So we do that. Grab the little included key, which is not a great security key, but it's better than nothing. And it's definitely helpful for making sure your latches don't come undone going down the road. All right, well, there you go. That's how you pack it up. Now you're ready to roll. For this weekend trip, we came up here to sort of north of Duluth on Lake Superior. It's a fun place we like to go to camp. And one thing that I noticed was I try to keep it as slimline as possible. This tent is still 8 inches tall, and I was still averaging over 15 miles per gallon, which was pretty awesome, and I was stoked to see, because sometimes with stacking lots of stuff on top of your vehicle, it will really hinder your gas mileage. But with my scan gauge, which should be adjusted to my tire size and the speed that I'm actually going per a GPS, it's reading that basically I'm getting right around 15 miles per gallon. So those are good numbers for me. I'll take it for sure. So if you wanted to mount even more on there and sacrifice the MPGs, you could, because it comes with 2 crossbars. Some other things to note are over here is where we would typically put our head, and then our feet would go at the end or in the tightest part of the clamshell. You could do it however you want, but if you are more of a stomach or a side sleeper, I think that's kind of an ideal setup. Unfortunately, I feel like if you're a back sleeper, these tents are going to start to get a little bit short if you're going to be 6'2" to 6'4"-ish range. I'm a stomach sleeper, and I like to kind of tuck my hands under, or my arms under my pillow a bit, so it works out fine because your feet can really take advantage of the end of that clamshell. But as you start to change how you would sleep, whatever position you like to sleep in, or depending upon how tall you are, 83 inches is, in my opinion, not the longest tent on the market. And there's definitely options out there that might be better for a super tall person. But for most people, this is gonna be just fine. So a couple of things about the materials on this tent. The fabric feels good to me. I don't feel like I'm an expert on this, but I guess I'll give my opinion. The screens seem to be dense enough to be good for bugs, and the material that the canvas is made out of seems to be thick enough. It was dense enough to not let in too much light, but also seems to be not too thick that it's like hard to work with, but it seems heavy enough weight to be okay in the wind. I'll kind of report more on that the more I use it, but those are just some of my sort of initial thoughts. Another thing I'll mention is the inside has sort of this like diamond fabric sort of paneling, which is just nice. It allows for smooth, clean panels and lines. There's tons of pouches and pockets to put your phone or glasses or things of that nature inside the tent, which is honestly great. Like I said, it's included with that 2-inch or so memory foam mattress, and there's an anti-condensation mat to go under it. Like I said, I used my 4-inch Big Agnes mattresses. They're completely air. They're not an air and foam sort of composite. So when I deflated those and with our sleeping bags, we could actually keep that stuff in the tent. I didn't try the pillows though. I think it's a little bit too thin for that. But the pillows are in the vehicle. I feel like the kick out portion is not a gimmick. That extra headspace in there is really great. And with that clear window up top, I think this sort of allows for a more spacious area if you ever had to sit in your tent in the rain for a long period of time. Because I know that's one thing people really like about the truck camper, tent or topper tents is it allows you to have a space to really hang out. And I think that this rooftop tent feels really spacious for that. So a lot of cool features with this tent. I don't have a ton of experience with rooftop tents to what I could kind of showcase it to, but I just would say that after testing out other forms of gear and comparing it to sleeping inside my vehicle, sleeping in ground tents, it just seems to be like a pretty good product that just works. And for someone who does weekend trips more like myself rather than like being a full-timer, it seems like a really great option, because at its price point of being, I think it's like $1,600 on Amazon, but every time I've checked, it's been $1,300. I don't know, the price seems to bounce around a little bit, but for either of those price points, it puts it at one of the cheapest clamshell rooftop tents on the market, but it's got all the bells and whistles of some of the more expensive ones, and the quality seems to be good enough. So we'll kind of see how it holds up longer term, but for the time being, I'm pretty stoked for this. And it comes with lots of different mounting options, accessories, and it's all fully insured too, which is really nice. So they seem to be trying to improve the best they can based on some of their Amazon reviews and other feedback. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how this company does over the next couple of years, because it seems to be like a very competitive product. All right, well, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in grabbing this tent, it's gone in and out of stock pretty frequently, and I think that's a testament to the potentially lack of supply, because this is a smaller company, but really probably I think more the demand. And so I've got a 5% off coupon. I'll put it up on the screen, but I'll put it down in the description as well. I think this should work on Amazon and on their website. That's what they told me. And it should hopefully be active for 6 months following the go live of this video. So go snag a tent if you're interested, because I think this tent's really cool. It's got a lot of features. I really love that leaning back fabric portion. It adds a wild amount of space. I also like the size of this tent. Despite the comments I made about sleeping, I think most people could probably figure out a way to still fit in the tent. And what's really nice is it allows you to mount it behind the lights. So on my tent, I've got the big SS5 light bar. This allows that space to be able to keep that there, and also still able to open my hatch with the ladder, and the ladder sticks up a little higher than the spoiler, so that means it protrudes a little into the rack space. And so I do like this size, because there's some really large tents out there on the market that will cantilever over the front of your windshield a bit, and like if you're gonna do something like that, you'd have to mount the lights on the front. So kind of like that I don't need to do that, and I can keep my rack the way that it is and just take this tent and drop it on there. So there's just a lot of things I think to like about this tent. Not to mention, in some of the screenshots or photos or B-roll that you saw of the tent, you may notice that I've started mounting some lights on my rack. The width of this tent is actually pretty handy. So my rack has, I believe, 47-inch long crossbars. Don't exactly remember the width of this tent. I'll maybe put it on the screen, but with those lights mounted, they kind of create a nice connection between the side of the rack and the side of the tent. Sometimes, you know, people will run these massive tents on their rack that just stick way out too wide or stick out way too tall. I don't think that really happened with this rack, so you know, I'll throw a couple pictures up on the screen now just of my 4Runner with the rack mounted. I think it looks pretty sharp despite the size, and yeah, for all the reasons I just mentioned, I think it's kind of a nice length. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. This was a budget product I really wanted to test out, and if you are wanting to do winter camping with it, I don't see why it wouldn't be a good contender to use a diesel heater with. And with that sunlight sort of skylight spot up top, you could, I'm sure, figure out a way to vent the heat nicely. And then you wouldn't have to open the sides potentially. There's just a lot of flexibility with this tent, and talking with their owner, they just continue to make improvements. So it's kind of cool. If you see comments on the Amazon page of like, my tent didn't come with this, or I was expecting this and it wasn't included in the packaging, they may like, I hope they upgrade their descriptions to include these things, because that's what they need to do. But I think over time, this tent is going to evolve into a better product. So don't necessarily expect it to always be identical to other pictures that you see, because this is a small company and that makes them more agile, so they can make these improvements as they go along. One thing that they had mentioned to me is that they upgraded the little clips inside of the tent so that they're hopefully not as brittle, because there's these plastic like C clamps that clamp over that bar that folds back. And it looks like they've upgraded those. One of my tents came with what they called a gel coat, but they've decided to go away from that gel coat for a number of reasons, being supply and some other things. So like, that's not going to be on future tents, but it may be on some older ones that people have talked about. So if there's like a negative review about gel coats, don't expect those to just be on all future tents. So there's just things like that where I think this tent is really cool now, but it may be an even better product in 3 months, who's to say. So, all right, well, that's enough kind of talking about stuff, but hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, consider subscribing, give it a like, helps me out, helps me be able to make more content like this. And yeah, I especially like making content like this. Alrighty, thank you, have a good day.